Good afternoon. Welcome to our weekly livestock market update. I'm Brownfield anchor reporter Megan Grebner. With us is University of Missouri's Scott Brown. Good afternoon, Scott.
Good afternoon, Megan.
All right, we've got a lot of reports to talk about today and some great information to get into. But first, let's take a look at the market recap. And there's a lot to talk about there, too, because on the cattle side, we started the week off super early, but we'll get into that. Let's start first with the hog market this week.
Yeah, so it's a wonderful week for cash hog prices for a change. If you look, I'll say we're up about $4.50 for the week on cash hogs. The current lean hog futures contract, however, was down about $1.50 this week with some weakness in the latter couple of days. On the pork cutout side, pork cutout value was up only about 40 cents this week, but we did see both stronger ham and belly prices on the pork side. So again, it's nice to see a higher pork cutout value go along with what were higher cash prices on the hog side. So good news this week in pork markets. Can't quite say the same thing on cattle markets. If we start with cash fed cattle, we were down about 250 is what I'm going to say for the week. Feeder cattle, a mixed bag, but this is really the first week we've been open in many of those markets, but I'm going to say feeder cattle down $7 to $12 this week. On the future side, live cattle, current contract down $1.50 on the CME, while the current feeder cattle contract up about $1. On the choice beef cutout value, we're up nearly $2 this week, and we really had strength across the board in all of those beef components making up that choice beef cutout value. So good week on the demand side, and it shows certainly on that wholesale choice beef cutout value.
Were we surprised as we look at that cash hog market to see such a strong and such big momentum coming out of the gates really from Monday on this week? And what maybe is causing that sudden aggressiveness on the buyer side?
Yeah, so I think you look at that and you go, demand has to be at play. And I know we'll get into this a little bit more, but export demand continues to look really strong on the pork side. I think that's helpful, as well as when we've been seeing what's been higher pork cutout values as we've started the year, getting some higher belly prices as well. There's just a lot of things that I think point to stronger demand, and I think that's been supportive of where the cash hog market's gone as we've started here in 2018.
We talked at the end of 2017 that we expected slaughter runs to continue fairly steady, at least to kick off the first quarter of 2018, and that definitely that momentum has kept up as we start on the hog side of things. Are we looking for that to cut back anytime soon?
I'm not certain we're going to see a lot of cutback, so we'll get some seasonal moves, of course, as we get into the summer part. But when you look at that last Hogs and Pigs report, where we were talking about sows farrowing in the Dece through May period up nearly 3%, it just tells me, and what were big pig crops as well, it tells me we're going to have a pretty good run of hogs here for a long period of time, and we're going to keep both production and hog slaughter at near or record levels as we go through 2018. So in many ways, it's a repeat of 17, just more production.
And one other quick question I have as we look at the markets this week, we've talked a lot about weights recently, and we've had lower weights, but we've had all of these weather issues out in cattle country and in the hog portions, the hog producing portions of the country. Does that worry us a little bit too, if we're adding too much weight, not being able to bring that livestock up?
Yeah, so well, if we run those weights too large relative to a year ago, it just multiplies the issues we have in terms of growth in slaughter numbers. And you look back at 2017, and it actually helped us in many ways as we kept weights down. Tough to really predict, and I keep having this battle between very cheap feed pushing weights higher. Yet you can look at some of the other data, and I'll take cattle on feed for a minute. The last cattle on feed report might have suggested we're pulling some lighter weight calves into the feed yard. That means they probably finish at a lighter weight as well. So we kind of got this pull between the two. I just hope we stay at or below year ago levels as we go through 2018, and then you kind of hope the demand side of the equation can stay up or even move us ahead when you look at where prices end up for the year.
And then to wrap up, let's talk a little bit about the cash cattle business this week. Usually we're waiting and waiting and waiting for some activity to happen, and it's Friday right before we chat that things wrap up. But this week it was a complete 180, and we were wrapped up pretty much by Tuesday, even Wednesday.
Yeah, so I think we've been seeing for a while markets trying to find a little bit of direction on the cattle side, and I think it's become but a little bit clearer, and we certainly pulled those cash markets down as we've started 2018. But many kind of waiting to see where we could get direction in those cattle markets made us wait till very late in the week here for the early part of 2018. And now that we've pulled cattle prices down, I think it was a little easier to get some business to occur earlier this week, and that's much of what happened in those markets.
All right, let's get into some of these reports. Let's start first with exports because there were some big numbers for November, and it was a big month for pork.
Yeah, so I kind of start by going, wow, it's been really good and continues to get better for us. Pork exports recorded the highest ever monthly value in November. We set at just about 224,000 metric tons of U.S. pork that left the United States. That's nothing but good. It sets us up for both beef and pork to talk about record levels on a calendar year basis for 2017, and some strong growth in 2017. When you look at beef exports, we were setting about 112,000 metric tons. That was down 3% from what was a very large volume number in 2016, November 2016, but that still stood as the second highest monthly total for 2017. There were a lot of very positives in terms of countries that we saw increases. South Korea was very strong. We might have some Winter Olympic activity going on there where we saw a lot of increase in pork trade to South Korea. Japan continues to be strong. We were up about 5% in volume to Japan with U.S. beef exports, which sometimes I like to remind us, we've been seeing, at least on the frozen side, some higher tariffs occurring there. So pretty strong indicators of just, the interest out of Japan for more U.S. beef. And we can also talk a little bit about China. It continues to be really good news, albeit still pretty small in terms of total volume. That exports to China total nearly $6 million for beef here in November. So just around the board, some very, very good news on that monthly trade data side.
I want to take a step back and look at Japan. You mentioned those tariffs. We know that that's happening on the frozen side. We've seen increases in the fresh side. Do we have to watch that tariff and that number on the fresh beef side like we had to watch pretty closely on the frozen beef side last year?
Yeah, Megan, absolutely. We need to be paying attention as we go here. And we were always worried all along, once we triggered the frozen side, we would see more fresh product come in and eventually end up triggering the fresh side of that quota or that safeguard provision as well. We've got a few more months to go where we can get out of that Japanese fiscal year and basically start over again. So we'll be paying attention as to whether or not we'll trigger it. I'm not certain at this point we'll get there, but it's one that we'll have to continue to watch.
I think the one thing to take away from this, Scott, is as we look at exports, it shows the vital importance of trade and finding a place for this large U.S. production.
Yeah, and I remind us, so as great as 2017 was, we need 2018 to be even better. We can't stop in terms of the increase in growth across time. If we're gonna increase meat production as we think in 2018, we need even more export growth to come. So we can't ever rest. It's never one of those where, okay, we got to the level, now let's try to maintain that. We need continued growth in what's going to be stronger domestic supplies of beef, pork, and chicken in 2018.
To wrap up report talk for this week, WASDE came out today. As we take a look at that report, what are some of the things that we're paying attention to on the livestock side?
Yeah, so I think most important, when you look at what USDA did this week on the livestock side of WASDE, beef, pork, and chicken production for 2018, all right, they've increased their forecast of those production numbers. That ends up translating into about another 0.6 of a pound increased per capita consumption of meat when you take red meat and poultry this month. So, we're talking about a record level of per capita consumption of those out of USDA's report. Yet when you look at what they do on the price side, they raised the bottom end of their fed cattle price projections in this month's report. They pretty much held everything else reasonably constant, a little higher chicken prices in this report. So to me, they're saying, hey, yeah, we got more supplies, but we're not really showing any weakness in price, telling me that they're also seeing domestic demand and international demand stronger, keeping those prices higher than maybe we might think under a normal supply expansion like we're going to see in 2018.
Scott, anything else this week?
I think that's covers the main topics. Kind of setting ourselves up to talk about retail prices that we're getting here as we finish the week, and can talk about those next week.
Well, I will not be with you next week and for the next 6 weeks. Brownfield anchor reporter Tom Stever will be filling in while I'm on maternity leave. So we look forward to him joining the conversation, and we look forward to chatting with you again in about a month and a half.
Very good. I look forward to getting the news on the new additions to your family, Megan.
Yes, baby 1 and baby 2 will be here in just about a week. So we are very excited. Scott, we will talk to you next Friday. Have a great weekend.
Sounds great, Megan.
To have our weekly livestock market update delivered to your email box every Saturday morning, go to our website, brownfieldagnews.com. Click on the subscribe link. You can also submit questions there as well. And for market updates twice daily, make sure to check out John Perkins' Market Minute. Have a great weekend. I'm Megan Grebner for Brownfield.